Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you. Featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your very best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today, we're inundated with information about Trump, Clinton, and all the candidates who were running for president. It's almost too much. However, when you read a book that was written by PRESLEY, ACUNA, and KENDALL SMITH, you're going to have a lot of fun. I want to introduce you to them, and they'll tell you a little bit about politics and all the things that are going on in the book that they're writing, which is a unconventional thriller. So let me introduce PRESLEY ACUNA first, and let me tell you about him. Now, PRESLEY ACUNA writes unconventional thrillers based in reality, but which take unexpected turns in the realms of fantasy, magical realism, science fiction, and horror. His aim with every project is to engage the reader in an engrossing mystery or adventure while simultaneously using the situation to explore the deeper meanings of the ideas behind the story. And our other guest today is KENDALL SMITH. Now, KENDALL Smith's foray into writing world began in his self-published debut novel, Double-Edged Justice, in 2007. His experience sharpened his perspective on the business and the craft itself. After a brief stint as a political-satire blogger, he returned to his roots with focus on writing novels. Now, I want to introduce again my two guests, PRESLEY ACUNA and KENDALL SMITH. Welcome to the Susan Brender Show.
We're glad to be here, Susan.
Hi, Susan. Looking forward to talking to you and your fans.
Oh, well, thank you. Now, I just mentioned in my introduction, I said we are inundated with information and all kinds of things on TV, on the news, all about Trump and all about Clinton. It's almost to ad nauseum. Don't you think that's true?
I would say it is. It's amazing to watch and listen to the press on a daily basis, just focus on the here and now and what's taking events during the day. With our novel Trumpicana, when we teamed up to do this, what we thought was interesting was looking at what are the consequences if Donald Trump gets elected. What is his mindset going to be? What is his philosophy going to be on the office? So that offers up a whole wealth of opportunity for political humor and satire, and we had a lot of fun writing it, and we think that readers will enjoy it.
Yeah, if I could add another comment or two. The idea was, due to the fact that the daily coverage of the commentary and activities of the Trump campaign being a continuous flow to the point of almost banality, right? Everything that he does it borders on the ridiculous, but it's rendered to be almost normal by the fact that it's reported so thoroughly every single day, and the news as entertainment wants to entertain you. So we all become a little bit immune to it. And the idea of writing a satire collection was to illuminate that it is something bordering on the ridiculous that really needs to be taken seriously. Mm-hmm. So, just like when you described my intentions when I write a story, it is to entertain you, but it's also to illuminate important ideas.
Mm. Now, both of you, what do you attribute to the fact that Trump, who he ran for president twice, by the way, and our audience ought to know that. And here's a little story I want to tell you. A number of years ago, I worked for TV, and one of the things that my executive producer asked me, she said, please get Trump on our show because he's running for president. So I called up the Trump people, and what do you think they said? They said, you want Trump to be on your show? Don't you understand that it's just a joke? I said, a joke?
Interesting.
I couldn't believe it. Now, I have a conspiracy theory, and of course this is just my opinion, and you can say whatever you want to say, but how about this idea? Now, Trump is running for president, and he's saying so many unbelievable things, crazy things, and he's very staunch. He's like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get these people, the immigrants out of this country. I'm going to build a wall. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And do you think there's any possibility that he's still joking and he really, really wants Clinton to win?
I think that Trump surprised himself by winning the nomination. I think he was there to huff and puff and make his brand into something bigger and better. And he didn't, from what I've seen to date, I do not believe that his tactics have led him to being taken seriously, even though there's a lot of support out there for him. And I don't know about your conspiracy theory. I just think that as we watch this play out, it just screams for satire. It really begs the question, how is this all going to turn out? And as you can see from the latest polls, as you can see the way he's conducting himself further, there's no way to really temper his approach to politics, which is really what I think is raising a lot of eyebrows. And I think he feeds off his own vitriol, you may say, his own angst in terms of the political climate itself.
Trump is a brand, Susan, and he knows that he's a brand. And for him to participate in the Republican nomination, the primary process and become nominated, was really almost a game, I think, for him, right? And he is, I think, as surprised as any of us. I really think, quite frankly, he's as surprised as anyone else that he's gotten this far. Mm-hmm. And a person running for the president of the United States, you usually assume is coming from a place of principles and visions and goals. A politician, right? Mm-hmm. Right. But can you really say that about Donald Trump? So I think you're onto something there.
Okay, so let's continue this conversation about Trump one more time. Now, Trump, he talks about the fact that we're a country that needs to be supported and recognized as the number one country in the world. Now, doesn't that say something about him, that he really doesn't understand how important it is not to threaten other countries? I'm going to use that word, threaten other countries. Give me your opinion about that.
I think that it's really not about other countries when he says those types of things. It's really him voicing the frustrations and the anger of a neglected sector in our own country, which is the side effect. You could go all night about this, right? The side effect of trade policies and, corporate globalism. There's a long list of reasons you could attribute for that. And, those kinds of statements are really inward aimed, in my opinion, not outward aimed.
Right.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think also when you look at leadership, I think his ability to feed on people's fear, I think that's the most interesting contrast in this election. And I think as time goes on, that fear message, it diminishes over time. I could be wrong, but it's he's really working that angle to try to scare people into, I think, supporting him. And we'll see how far that goes, but recent poll numbers don't show it's going so well.
Kendall, what do you attribute to the fact that he does have a lot of people who support him, even though he says all these, I told you, very, very scary things? What's wrong with our society? Is there anything wrong, or is it just the way it is?
I'll share with you an article I read, or just some insights I read from Peggy Noonan's column in the Wall Street Journal, which I think her perspective on the political climate is brilliant. I think that what she attributes towards the climate right now is you have a large sector of society that falls into the protected basket, and then there's the unprotected basket. And people that go to good schools, live in good neighborhoods, that are not dealing with companies shipping themselves overseas. And then you have the others that are really struggling to get by, that are trying to stay local in their hometowns and find work. And there's she talks about, and she spoke about it in today's column, there's a real disconnect between the leaders of today and what the reality is on the ground. And that is what I think has fueled some of Trump's fire. It is legitimate on some point. There are some true economic conditions that are difficult, but I think the way in which he's approaching it, it's going to be a narrow scope of focus in terms of how that plays out, and it draws even a larger audience as time goes on, I believe.
I see. That's interesting. It's kind of an interesting idea or theory, if you will. Now, PRESLEY, there are a lot of different people who say that if he gets in, we're going to really have a major problem. But we haven't spoken about Clinton yet. Now, Clinton is accused of lying. Is that a horrible thing to you, or do you think that that's just the way it is for any political person? Because you can't always tell the truth, because how do you get voted in?
Yeah, that's a good point that you raise, and I share some of your view on that, your implied view on that. I think that it's difficult to be a politician and make everyone happy, right? And promises are not something that can be fulfilled by one single individual. Policy, promises to the voting public require, consensus from the various branches of government and, persuasion and negotiation and trade-offs, right? Mm-hmm. So things can be perceived as becoming lies, even though, there was a process that maybe led to, other gains, right? So, and there are secrets, right? And it's difficult, I think, to be a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout and be a global scale politician, a major politician. Right. So I don't really put that much severity to the claims that she's, misspoken or lied or misdirected people about her activities. I do think that, she's guilty of thinking that she's above, if she doesn't get caught, it's okay, right? And then she does get, caught. That's definitely a flaw. But is it a fatal flaw? I don't believe so.
Okay. Well, let's get into the Trumpicana. Say it for me. It's Trumpicana. Is it correct?
Trumpicana. Yep.
Okay. So let's start all about the stories in Trumpicana. And I want to understand how you all got started. First, start with that. How did you get started writing the book together?
Yeah, it was an interesting collaboration because as we went through the political season, PRESLEY and I have worked on other projects together. We're authors with PercussionPublishing.com. But when we sat down and talked about just some ideas we were bouncing back and forth, we looked at the challenge at the timing of putting a novel out, which can take years in terms of the content, the editing. But we thought a short story approach should be really interesting, and to divide and conquer further, for him to write a story, for me to write a story, to package them together, that was the idea. And we sat down at the end of May, actually May 20th, to flesh out, can we make this something real that we can get out in time during the political season? Mm-hmm. And we shared our short stories back and forth, and we didn't have the idea of Trumpicana and how that would come together yet. We didn't even have the title at that point. But just the idea of doing satire and really focusing on what's going to happen if this guy gets into office. What's Trump going to do? And that was kind of just exciting from a writer's perspective because it opens up so many more avenues. And with fiction, as long as your mind doesn't wander too far off the ledge, mm-hmm. You can have a lot of fun with it. And when I heard PRESLEY's story, I loved it. I thought it was so cool. And just writing it is so much fun. And we really scrambled. We got the whole project done in 45 days.
Wow.
And the result were, 2 succinct short stories that are fun reads. And a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into it in a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm. It was definitely a fun challenge, a bit of a competition, too. Trying to out-satire each other. And the juices are still flowing. There are other stories in the works. So it's a great collaboration.
Okay. So, PRESLEY, I know we don't have a lot of time for you to read from your book, but just tell our audience a little story that is part of the book. You said that you wrote it as a mystery and a thriller. Okay, so give us, do you have the book in front of you, by the way?
I don't have it in front of me, but I can talk about it if you wish.
I do. I
wrote a story that takes a look at what the presidential election process might look like in the near future if we were to have a Trump presidency and we were to have a certain deconstruction of our current election process. So in the future where the story takes place, presidential elections have devolved to the point of being not that different from reality shows on TV. In fact, that's even a real thing in I think in Palestine. There was actually a reality show-based election for the presidency there. It's real, which amazed me when I found out about it. So the story kind of takes that premise and rolls it forward for you from the viewpoint of an American establishment politician, where all the other candidates are a little more ridiculous.
More ridiculous than Trump?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I do have the book in front of me now, and I could try and read a section or two for you.
Go for it.
If you want me to.
I
Sure.
absolutely do.
So this is a section where the establishment politician, who is Senator Randall Bradley, is meeting his final contestant, which is a mysterious character by the name of Mr. X. So they're on the stage together, and they're walking towards each other. So here we go. Now there's just two candidates left in this race for the presidency. Myself, which is the first-person narration of Senator Randall Bradley, and Mr. X, the man in the mask who claims to be a superhero, though he has performed no overt acts of superheroism to date. And yes, he does wield the power of a kind. He speaks with calm confidence and quiet gravitas that hypnotizes his audience whenever he travels. He talks in parables about his alleged humble roots without revealing any specifics and describes them as the basis of his moral fiber. He has a good story and a good costume, even if his superhero stint is a bit of a sideshow flamboyance. I look at him inches away and wonder about the costume. Is there a subtle juxtaposition going on here? Could this be his magic? The nation has had its forays of putting cowboys, soldiers, actors, and rock stars into the Oval Office. All have crumbled, either victims of their own narcissism or once faced with the pressures and complexities of world leadership, have shown themselves to be nothing more than woefully inadequate figureheads. Yet I wonder about that costume. It leads us to wonder about the man behind the mask. I sigh. All I know that it's boiled down now, reduced to a fine glacé, a contest of two extremes. Myself, the last establishment politician, and Mr. X, the nation's first superhero. I think that's a good excerpt for now.
I sure do. Now, Kendall, let's get you involved in the show as well. So,
sure.
When you wrote the book with, of course, PRESLEY, when you thought about this particular subject, did you feel that you were doing justice to what was going on right now? Is it a story that can be read anytime, even if he does win presidency? Is it a kind of common story that people need to have fun with?
It definitely is. I think that political humor is at the core of the DNA of both short stories, and it can be read anytime. And I think honestly, if he does get elected, we're going to have many more editions coming out, maybe some more projects in the works, because I just think there is, when you think about it back to the days of Reagan and the Saturday Night Live skits, all that went into having fun with his character, even though he was a pretty decent president. With Trump, and you never know what you're going to get. It's like he's the Forrest Gump of politics. He flies off the handle, and I think that in itself, there's a lot of material to work with. Mm-hmm. And I also say that with my story, I looked at I looked at the very first day when he's in the office, and the title of the story is White House Arrest. Mm-hmm. And he gets there by using manipulation. He's on the podium, and the story is centered on his director of the Secret Service, which he inherits from the previous administration. And unbeknownst to Trump, there is a bit of a vendetta going on where she, in her family's history, had a land deal that went sour, a fictional one, of course, down in Florida, and this is her opportunity, and there's plenty of people ready there to support her to make sure Trump is essentially put under house arrest in the White House.
Oh, my goodness. That is a very interesting thing. Wow. Now, that sounds a little bit, forgive me, but there's that is on Netflix. And it also talks all about a man who's running for politics who has done some really horrible things. And it emphasizes the fact that there is so much corruption. There's so many things that the candidates have to do in order to win the election. So it really is kind of like a reality show. And I wonder, would you say that after you finish this particular book, and wouldn't it make a wonderful play?
Yeah, it could. I could think about Mel Brooks, and I think about his show, The Producers, and the thing I think that we're trying to do is we don't want to go too dark. You have to have some fun with this.
Sure.
And when you think about The Producers and the show he put on, it was called Springtime for Hitler, and it was a whole spoof. And obviously, we're not on his, at his level, but I think Trump offers up a lot of opportunities for series and shows and whatnot. But he's an interesting character.
There you go. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about you two. Okay, PRESLEY, how did you start your career? And I know that you're a singer, correct?
No, I'm actually a computer specialist.
So I'm mixing you up with Kendall?
No, we worked at the same company, which is how we met, but we have different functions. Kendall's in sales, and I'm in technology. Mm-hmm. But we are both drummers, which is where we started, commiserating, talking about music. Maybe that's where you got the idea that I'm a singer, and I'm great at karaoke. But then one thing led to another, and we quickly discovered that we were both writers on the side, and that led to us, working together to publish some of our other books under a common publishing imprint, which is of also our own company, Percussion Publishing. As a way to, have an umbrella organization where we could bring together artists, editors, literary agents, other authors who might want assistance with the self-publishing process. So that, in turn, finally led to us collaborating on an actual book together. Mm-hmm. My career, to go back to your original question, started about 15 or 20 years ago when I actually was working on a full-length novel, which was only published last year. It took about 3 years to write it, and then I put it down for a while to, continue being a technologist, and wrote many stories over the years, which are soon going to be coming out as a short story collection. I have quite a back catalog of stories. So I've been writing all along. And then upon meeting Kendall, he's a very motivated individual, and he is really the impetus that has led us to create Trumpicana. He's the driving force that got me to, work on it. And
he's being too kind.
and work on my own novel, and I acknowledge that openly, both in my book and in the acknowledgement section, and here in this interview. Here we are as a result of all that working in the background over all those years.
Yeah. Now, Kendall, we don't have a lot of time, but I want to ask you, if you had to do it over again, would there be anything different that you would write, since you've seen all the things that are going on with Trump and all the politicians?
I think there's a lot more material. I wouldn't change anything differently because we didn't really have time to do it. We had to get the product out in a timely manner. The most exciting thing is if you look at the cover of Trumpicana, which is on sale at Amazon and Kindle, the cover artwork is, we had two people working on this. Jason Sealer did the actual Trump orange visual. He is one of the most respected illustrators in the country, and he actually designed Time magazine's cover a couple of years ago when he was commissioned to draw the Pope for their Man of the Year cover. And since then, he's done a lot more of the work. We were able to find him, work with him, and commissioned him to do the artwork. And then we had another designer, Jessica Jaffe, who was fantastic at designing the other parts of the novel, including the logo. Mm-hmm. And I think if we do it differently next time, I think what we'd like to do is make each story really unique, engaging, maybe have 4 stories instead of 2, make it a little more meatier. Mm-hmm. But I think this thing has legs, and I think that the reviews so far, we've had about a dozen reviews, all positive, great feedback. And we hope to come out with something else, maybe a volume 2, and down the road a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, you'll have a lot of food for thought, believe me. Now, last but not least, Presley, if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to buy your book or really speak to you about what it's like to write a book or a little bit more about your thoughts about Trump, et cetera, what would they do?
Well, there's a website for the Trumpicana book, which is www.trumpicana.com, where you'll find a lot more material about the backstory of the book, Q&A from ourselves, the authors, and contact information. And I think if you want to actually buy the book, you should be able to click on the book link and go directly to Amazon, where you can buy a hard copy or a digital Kindle edition of the book. You can also write to us in email by writing to Trumpicana@percussionpublishing.com, and we'll certainly receive your emails and happily answer them.
We love hearing from people and love sharing ideas, and we're also on Facebook. We're also on Twitter, so we're pretty social.
There you go. So my guests today have been PRESLEY ACUNA, who wrote a wonderful book called The Trumpicana, and his partner, if you will, who is KENDALL SMITH. I want to tell the audience that it's been a pleasure having them on, and I know there's so much more material that I'd like to invite them again. So thank you so very much, PRESLEY ACUNA and KENDALL SMITH, for being on the Susan Brender Show.
Thank you, Susan. It's been my pleasure, too.
Same here. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Susan Brender Show. To be a guest, email sebrender@yahoo.com.